The Grind, a Minnesota sports podcast.
This is The Grind, a Minnesota sports podcast. It's been 12,301 days since the Minnesota Twins captured their 1991 World Series title. And that's why this podcast is called The Grind, because being a Minnesota sports fan is a grind. And being a Minnesota sports professional athlete is also a grind, which is why this podcast is called The Grind. Many stories to dive into: Timberwolves free agency, Minnesota Wild trades, Minnesota Timberwolves stories from rookies, and a new arena name, which is very odd. But first, I need to tell you about 5 Star Bath Solutions of Minneapolis, because they transformed our bathroom in 48 hours. A full bathroom remodel. We talked to some other companies, 8-week project, 9-week project. What? We have to cram into your teeny tiny bathroom for weeks right off our bedroom? And it's going to take forever for this master bathroom to get done? I don't want to do that. 5 Star Bath Solutions came in and remodeled our entire master bathroom and had it done in 48 hours. Our prior bathroom had blue floor, a blue step going into the shower, handrails, a moldy shower, a brown vanity, ugly countertops and mirror, and 1 sink. They come in and voila! In 48 hours, a new floor, a new tub, a new surround, a new vanity, a new countertop. We went from 1 sink to 2 sinks and a new mirror. 48 hours, we had our bathroom back. Affordable payment plans, free consultations, 5 Star Bath Solutions of Minneapolis. Contact them today. 5 Star Bath Solutions of Minneapolis. All right, where should we start? Let's talk about the Minnesota Wild and their new arena name, Grand Casino Arena. The Xcel Energy Center is gone. I do wonder how long it will take Minnesota sports fans to get used to the new arena name, because where the Golden Gophers play football, it's technically called Huntington Bank Stadium. But my first instinct is to call it the Bank, the TCF Bank Stadium. TCF. And now that the Minnesota Wild are no longer called the Xcel Energy Center, and they weren't even really called the Xcel Energy Center. The Wild, they were known as the X. Just like Anthony Edwards is known as Ant, Kevin Garnett is known as KG. Xcel Energy Center was known as X. The X. Are you going to the X? Are you going to go watch the Wild at the X? No one called it the Xcel Energy Center. It was always the X. And now the Grand Casino Arena has taken over as the new arena name. I have a question. How long is it going to take for the state of Minnesota to legalize sports gambling? It is one of the most fascinating things to me that one of the 4 professional sports teams can rename an arena the Grand Casino Arena, and yet the state still has not legalized sports gambling. Because you look at how many states have done that throughout the United States. 38 have legalized sports betting. Additionally, Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico also permit legal sports betting. So a new arena can go and be called the Grand Casino Arena, yet you still can't legalize sports gambling in the state of Minnesota. That seems like a problem. I don't know why they can't legalize sports gambling. I don't know what goes into it. But I do know this. There are 38 other states that have legalized sports betting. And Minnesota is one of 12 that haven't done it yet. Iowa's done it. Have the Dakotas done it? I don't even. But I know Iowa has. Why has Minnesota not? And I'm not even a gambler. I don't even gamble on the side for fun. There's a long time ago when I lived in Washington, D.C. for 3 years, and I had a hospital bill of like $120, and I thought, what if I make a couple bets, I hit on those bets, and I'll pay off that hospital bill with this bet that I make money on? Well, it turns out Derrick Rose goes for 50-something points for the Timberwolves, and I lose the bet. And then I got the hospital bill to pay for and the bet that I lost. So I ended up losing money in that situation because of Derrick flipping a Rose, hitting the reset button and putting up 50-plus points. I remember watching that game because I was in a hotel with a friend from Minnesota that was in town. I was watching the game and I was realizing what was going on. And I'm like, I put money on the Timberwolves to lose this game. And now Derrick Rose is going for 50-plus points. Crazy. So that's story number one. What else do we got? The Minnesota Timberwolves did not pick up the team options for Luka Garza and Josh Minott. Luka Garza has already picked up a deal with the Boston Celtics, a 2-year deal, $5 million fully guaranteed. Josh Minott, I don't think has signed anywhere yet. I have not seen that. But a lot of people were reacting to the Minnesota Timberwolves re-signing of Joe Ingles. 37-year-old Joe Ingles, who can stroke it from anywhere, but is not going to give the Timberwolves valuable playing time at all. And I look at Joe Ingles and I see people reacting. Why did the Timberwolves do this? Why did they not just bring him on as a coach? He's not going to give the Timberwolves anything. My first reaction to that is, how many players that are the 14th best player on a roster give the team anything? On most NBA teams, the rotation doesn't go further than 8 or 9 guys, which means there's about 4 to 5 guys on the bench that never play. So Joe Ingles is just going to be one of those players that doesn't play. And Joe Ingles was not the only player on the Timberwolves roster last year that never played. Minott hardly played. Garza barely played. PJ Dozier never played. Bones Highland never played. So why not bring Ingles back for another year to be that player coach? Because players love him. He formed an amazing friendship with Jaden McDaniels last year. Who knew Jaden McDaniels even spoke? And Joe brings a leadership, a swagger, a gangsta to the Timberwolves roster that I don't think anybody would look at Ingles and disrespect the IQ and the player that he's been throughout his career. When Ingles speaks, people listen. So, yes, the Timberwolves are paying him $3.6 million next season over or compared to the $2 million that they would have paid Luka Garza or Josh Minott. But regardless, they're all going to be playing the same role. They're going to be riding the bench. And why not have a guy riding the bench that actually adds basketball IQ into the equation, that adds valuable experience and veteran leadership instead of a guy that's young that doesn't add any of that. So on the surface, it seems like, why are the Timberwolves bringing him back? But you look into it more, and every NBA organization has 4 to 5 guys that ride the bench that don't play a single minute in 95% of basketball games. Joe Ingles is that guy, but he brings a valuable trait that most bench warmers don't. And it's a wealth of experience and a basketball IQ. And the inbounds pass. Joe Ingles comes in for 0.9 seconds to inbound the pass. That's more valuable than you even realize. That's a joke, but it's true. It's more valuable than you realize to have a guy that's calm under pressure and can deliver the ball while there's a 7-footer guarding him, to have the strength to throw it over that guy and the height to do it. So even if you're just paying Joe Ingles to be an inbounds passer for the Timberwolves, I think there's value in that. And the biggest Timberwolves story is that they lose Nickeil Alexander-Walker in free agency to the Atlanta Hawks. But the Timberwolves were able to pull off a sign-in trade. They picked up a future second-round pick and cash from the Atlanta Hawks. And this keeps the Timberwolves from entering the second apron, which if you enter the second apron, you have to pay a lot in taxes. And I'm sure of it. I guarantee you that Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry do not want to pay their fair of taxes their first year as official Timberwolves owners. So the fact that you could sign and trade Nickeil Alexander-Walker and not have to take a contract back, but instead take back a second-round pick and some cash considerations, is a cool thing. Now, we all knew that Nickeil Alexander-Walker would be gone after the Timberwolves focused on Naz Reid and Julius Randle. The question that needs to be answered with Nickeil Alexander-Walker gone is, does Terrance Shannon Jr., who showed lots of promise last year for the Timberwolves in his rookie campaign, is he going to make his presence felt in year 2? Now, I love what Terrance Shannon Jr. brought the Timberwolves last year, and I think he can play. He has a lot of energy. He has a lot of skill, and he is a scorer. He's like an energy buzzer, an energy bunny on the court. And you saw it during the limited action that he got last year in the playoffs and in the regular season. When Terrance Shannon Jr. was on the court, good things were happening for the Timberwolves offensively and defensively. And Terrance Shannon Jr., hey Zoe, how's it going? You brushed your hair? What's that? You didn't look at pictures while mom brushed your hair? Oh, that's so cute. You want to come over here? Can I see your hair? Oh, that is so pretty. Wow. Ooh, you brushed your teeth too? And you have pigtails? Oh, that is cute. No braids today? Okay. It looks really nice. Do you think I can finish recording my show now? Okay, thank you, honey. Thank you for showing me your cool hair. Bye. If you could close it, that would be great. Thank you. So that was my daughter. Where was I? Terrance Shannon Jr. And Terrance Shannon Jr., his greatest decision was not entering the NBA draft as a rookie. because he is valuable to the Timberwolves because he has his man body and he is 24 years old. And he has developed into the body that he's going to have for basically the rest of his NBA career. If he was 19 years old, he would really bring nothing to the Timberwolves organization. But he has the athleticism and he has the skill because he has developed. If you are a college basketball player that is not projected to be a top 10 pick in the NBA draft, everybody should make the decision like Terrance Shannon Jr. did, because the longer you allow your body to develop, then you allow a team to select you, and then you can play right away instead of having to go through the developmental process. You see too many times a guy that's a freshman come out into the NBA draft, is selected in the 20s, and then is a nobody for the rest of his career. Instead of being patient, waiting for the process, allowing your skill and body to develop, and then he steps in and he has a role for the Timberwolves last year and will have a bigger role this next year. So I think that more players coming out of college basketball should make a similar decision as Terrance Shannon Jr. did, especially with all of the money they can make in college basketball these days and in college sports. You can make more money as a star player for a college than you could as the 20-something overall pick in the NBA draft. So hopefully we see that happening more. But Nickeil Alexander-Walker, now a lot of people liked him, and he brought an energy and a consistency to the Timberwolves. I personally did not like his inconsistency because he was very inconsistent. And we saw it throughout his time with the Timberwolves. Yeah, he shot 38% from three. Yeah, he could knock down the three and ball handle, and his defense was good. But you saw too many stretches from Mr. Walker where he would put up 15 points, 20 points, and then he would no-show for a few games in a row. So although he will be, missed from the Timberwolves organization, I do think that he's replaceable with a Terrance Shannon Jr. coming off the bench. So although the Timberwolves couldn't bring him back, I don't think the Timberwolves will miss him as much. One more quick story to dive into, and we'll wrap up the show. The Minnesota Wild made some noise and traded for Detroit Red Wings player Vladimir Tarasenko. Tarasenko, 33, is a two-time Stanley Cup champion, has 304 career NHL goals. He has 1 year remaining on his $9.5 million contract. So the Wild will pay him $4.75 million because it's a 2-year, $9.5 million contract. And what's interesting is the Wild bring on a player that only had 11 goals last year. He had 22 assists. But you look at Tarasenko's career a little closer, and this is his 6th NHL team in the last 3 years. Teams around the league view Tarasenko as expendable. And most likely the Wild will too. Because he has a 1-year deal left, I would assume that he will walk after the year is over. So he will be on his 7th team in 4 years. Which means this move does not get me excited for the Wild. And I don't think the Wild have improved their roster by bringing in an aging Tarasenko that does have Stanley Cup experience, but you've got to make it to the Stanley Cup first. You've got to make it into the playoffs first. And This next storyline is going to be the fascinating one to follow, because after trading for Tarasenko, the Wild will have $13 million to spend in NHL free agency when it opens on Tuesday. And for years, the Wild have been hamstrung by the contracts to Zach Parise and Ryan Suter. But now they're not as much. They have money to spend. And although they have been hamstrung by those two contracts, sometimes what happens is when you're hamstrung like that, that hides the inefficiencies of an organization. It creates a built-in excuse to say, well, we can't improve the roster because Zach Parise and Ryan Suter's contracts are killing us. Well, now that those contracts are not what they used to be, and you have money to spend, it will be fascinating to see if the Wild can take their roster to another level. Because what's the excuse? The built-in excuse of Parise and Suter is gone. And with them being gone, now what? You have the money to spend. You have the ability to bring in players that can play. You're not bringing in these veterans on minimum contracts anymore because of the outlandish contract that you're still paying Parise and Suter. You have $13 million to spend. You've got Kirill Kaprizov, who is in the prime of his career. And when he's on the ice, the Minnesota Wild are a different team. So you bring in some players to complement Kaprizov. You're looking at a team that really could ascend to another level in the NHL. But if you can't bring in guys and take this roster to another level now that those contracts are basically done, then the deficiencies of the Wild organization is going to be obvious. It's kind of like the injury theory. The injury theory, you see it all the time in professional sports, where a team tries to make this run at a title. A player gets hurt mid-season or in the playoffs, and that actually, in a way, when that team fails, that injury actually makes the team come back for another year, even if they weren't relatively close. Because what happens is player A gets injured, and then it's like, oh, the season's over. We better run it back one more year to see if we can pull this thing off. But in reality, you had really no chance at winning at all anyways. Now you're just stalling and trying to put a built-in excuse. It's kind of the same thing with the Wild. The Wild have been hamstrung by these contracts for years. And now you don't have these contracts hamstringing you anymore. Then what does the excuse become? If you can't build a roster now, Bill Guerin, you're out the window. You're gone. You're going to get fired. Because you've had this excuse for years. Well, Parise, the contract, Suter, the contract, we can't pay guys. Well, now that those aren't what they used to be, what's your excuse? Why did you not improve the roster? So you better improve the roster this offseason, or the owners, the fan base will be growing impatient very, very quickly. Because as sour as those contracts made you feel, it created a built-in excuse. So those are the takes for the day. 12,301 days, Minnesota sports. We'll see what happens next. We'll definitely make it to 12,302 days tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube or listening somewhere else. Timberwolves, we'll keep an eye out on some roster decisions in free agency if they add in a player or two, a point guard or whomever. But now that the first day of NBA free agency is over and NHL free agency begins soon, we will keep our eyes out and be writing articles. mnsportsgrind.com. Check it out. Thank you for watching and for making this podcast part of your day.